we're going to talk about digital signage for a little bit. And the next panel is Digital Signage 3.0, driving smarter, more contextual content at scale. So let's go ahead and bring on our panelists, David Kile, Mark Pavlish, and Seth Teates. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Oh.
Hi, can you hear me all right? I'm not sure my audio.
Yes.
Excellent.
I can hear you great. So, David, I'm going to start with you, but I want all of you to kind of start by introducing yourselves and talking about, your path in the industry a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So Dave Kile with SNA Displays. I am the Senior Director of Solutions. That department kind of covers all of the back-end systems, all of the rack room equipment, everything that operates the big, spectacular LED video walls that we install all around the world. I come from a live entertainment background, live theater, performing arts, went through another manufacturer that also did large video displays and ended up here at SNA about 8 years ago.
Very cool. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, Mark Pavlish. I'm from Forté, formerly AVI Systems. My title is Solutions Architect, which is a new fancy name for sales engineer. So calling myself an architect is really an insult to real architects. But I've been doing digital signage for a little over 20 years now for a variety of companies, and happy to answer any questions that you may have for us.
Perfect. Seth, what about you?
So I'm Seth Teates with Analog Way. I've been with Analog Way now for 19 years, so a little while. Seen quite an evolution in digital signage and all sorts of video technology. My title is Senior Regional Sales Manager, which is a fancy word for saying sales guy in the Northeast here. So I cover from Virginia to Maine, and we do lots of all sorts of cool projects along with both of our partners here. So this will be fun.
Fantastic. So, David, I'm going to start with you again. So, from a manufacturer's perspective, what do you think is driving the shift from static to dynamic signage? And how are display technologies evolving to support that?
So I think, historically, the biggest change and push towards digital was the ability to control content immediately. Going from vinyl to LED, I think the earliest was 96 in Times Square, where we started seeing the ability to make those instantaneous changes. And really to this day, that's one of the key things that is a push for people to go towards that. Whether you're doing advertising, we do a lot of outdoor advertising as well, or simple indoor displays that are in a more non-advertising application, hotels, lobbies, things like that. Really being able to update that content live frequently as needed is really the big push towards that. And a lot of that has been going through a transition to tighter and tighter pixel pitches. And those pixel pitches, from the LED wall perspective, relate, of course, to higher resolution. So, similar to the consumer electronics market where things are going, from 2K to 4K, 4K now to 8K, and et cetera, we're seeing those same kind of pushes in the video wall space and the digital signage space. We have a sign that's going up right now that's 28K. That's just a single display of that size on the side of a building. So those pixel pitches, both outdoor, seeing a lot of sub 4 mil displays, and indoor sub 1 mil displays. That's pushing a lot of us to increase a lot more horsepower on the back end to get that all to work. Of course, with Seth and Analog Way, all of the number of outputs and sources that need to run in to make that all work. We're seeing a lot of that push towards a tighter and tighter pixel pitch for sure. And it really needs like a flexible video back end to be able to support that tighter and tighter pitch and resolution.
Mark, when you're designing large-scale signage projects, how do you plan for flexibility so the content can adapt to real-time events or changing audience needs?
Right, that's a great question, and I got to be honest. And most of the customers that I deal with, they're not focused on content, and they should be. They're
Right.
not even these kind of questions, but they should be.
Right.
It's one of the issues in the industry, and the lack of attention content gets can be really stunning. And I saw another podcast just recently where they surveyed the audience and said, should content drive signage or should hardware first? And 50% or close to it said hardware should. And I just can't make sense of that. If you buy hardware first and get that all specced out, purchased, and in your building, and then you go, oops, what are we going to do for content? And then you bring the marketing staff in, and you bring an integrator in, and you talk to people what kind of content you want. You might have a mismatch there. You might have players in a system that's not compatible with what you're trying to do. So people should be thinking about content first. And in prepping for this call, I was really thinking about it, and content needs to be first, not second.
Absolutely. That I mean, I wish I could say that surprised me, but it doesn't. Seth, so video processing plays a big role in enabling dynamic signage. So what processing capabilities are most important to make signage responsive and contextual?
Well, actually, I think that ties in perfectly with both what David and Mark were saying. It needs to be flexible because the clients half the time don't even know what they're going to put on it. So the processing is really the backbone behind everything. I think the key capabilities there needs to be large enough to handle multiple different media servers. And the reason for that is some media servers are more adept to generative content. Some media servers are more adept to interactive content, and some are just plain old playback. So your processor needs to accommodate not only the different types, but also primary and backup. So first and foremost, you need a large enough processor to handle not just one source, but a myriad of different servers and auxiliary sources. You might want an IMEG camera for an interactive experience. And certainly on the larger screens, we do takeovers, like all of Times Square. David can attest, a lot of our systems there, they'll do complete takeovers of the square. So now we need to be able to accommodate a guest media server as a source. So certainly size, quality can't be overstated here, because when you're dealing with inexpensive scaling products, they might look great on a 60-inch display. Completely different experience on a 60-foot display or entire city block. So these are giant magnifying glasses on the signal, so you really can't cut corners on quality. Low latency is another big deal that you want in your processor because of IMEG or live sources. You don't want a Shakira concert in the middle of the Times Square wall be latency on the giant wall around Shakira. It's got to move with Shakira. So, and just mission critical reliability. You got to have this can't go down. So really quality of all the key points and size to accommodate more sources than you'd expect.
Yeah, no, great points. David, what hardware level features or integrations do you see as being essential for supporting this smarter data-driven signage that we're putting at scale now?
Yeah, so it's exactly what Seth was just saying. It's really, we're focused on uptime, uptime and performance of the display, and getting ahead of any issues with those displays. Honestly, nobody's happy or profiting from a display that isn't operating 100%. Hardware status is key for us. Things like failure reporting and logging have been around for a long time, but like getting those data points into a place that we can see what's actually happening with those displays. As an example, we pull a ton of information from our displays, voltages, power supply information, data cabling, a bunch of stuff. And we load that all into Salesforce and get metrics back about how a display is operating. We also do the same thing for our rack room equipment. So, Seth's equipment that's in our rack rooms, we're pulling data off of those devices over SNMP to see if there's over temperature situation, to see if we're losing power, losing connectivity, heartbeat status. We report all that stuff back into Slack, and just being able to see that live as it happens, along with pictures and photos of displays. Pretty much every one of our displays that's in a high-profile application has a monitoring camera installed, and we capture footage from those cameras on a pretty frequent basis just to see if the display is in fact operating the way it should be. A lot of the diagnostics we have on the back end can show us if it's theoretically working correctly, but having actual eyes on it helps a ton. And then we have evidence of proof of play, things that people want to come back and say, hey, my ad or my content has changed that I've pushed to this display in my lobby or wherever that is. And we're able to issue tickets off of that. So having that integration from all of the devices that we have in our display and in our rack room really helps us have a lean service department and issue repairs and things a lot easier, and is really essential to having an operating display that doesn't go down.
Absolutely. Mark, what are some of the biggest operational challenges that integrators face when deploying adaptive signage, and how do you solve them in the field?
Right. So to be fair, I did get this question ahead of time, so I did have time to think about it. And what comes to mind is usually a bunch of hardware and technology and software. But the more I sat back and thought about it, I realized what really is the biggest challenge, and it's the humans involved in the networks and the deployment and the management of these systems.
Hmm.
And that's because there's technology out there that can do just about anything you want, but the problems are really from people. There's people with agendas, there's politics, there's budgeting issues, there's disagreements about scope. So it takes someone with a lot of patience and willpower to wrangle all the parties together and to get them to agree. What are we trying to do here? What is the goal? So we could talk about technology and this operating system and that. But for me, the hardest part is managing expectations and managing customers and getting people to all pull in the same direction.
No, I think that that is completely fair to say that it's humans. Um, Seth, when it comes to scaling and distributing content to multiple displays, multiple locations, what is the common design mistake that you see, and how can that be avoided?
That's a good question. I would say the most common mistake I see would be choosing the wrong mode of transportation. So what works well in a corporate environment, like 1 gig AV over IP solutions that are compressed when you're going to 60 and 90-inch displays, does not work on these big displays. So basically compression, stay away from compressed formats when you're dealing with large scale digital displays like this. Compression is the devil. It will show absolutely on these big screens. So stay uncompressed. Design bigger than you think you need to be. One common mistake I see is a designer will go in and just put a single media server to drive this big multi-million-dollar display. And then they completely don't budget for anything else. And then we come in and we're like, hey, what about your backup servers? What about your cameras? What about the takeover servers? What about guest servers? What about all this stuff? Oh, now suddenly the cost just went through the roof compared to what they had accommodated for. So I would say make sure you're using the right formats, particularly when it comes to distribution to the displays. No compression, baseband, full bandwidth, and just don't cut corners, because it shows on these big displays. You can get away with a lot on a 90-inch display. You can't get away with it on a 90-foot display.
Yeah, no, I think that that's completely fair. So this next question is for all of you, and this is kind of for whoever wants to take this first, and feel free to piggyback off each other's responses. But how do you all approach designing a signage system that will still feel current and capable like 5 years from now?
I'll jump in there, just keeping the same how we're doing this here. I think I have 2 points. I think the first thing would really be resolution. keeping the resolution as high as possible. And that goes back to the first statement there, pixel pitch. Getting, let's say, having a value engineered display that's a low resolution is going to show its age a lot faster than a display that is nice and tight of pixel pitch and higher resolution. I think the second thing is a little bit less common, but I would say for a lot of signage applications, especially lobbies and places, and even like what Seth's saying in Times Square and so forth, having the ability to put up a live input is really something that helps keep a display in the forefront of people's minds when they're walking through that space. We see a lot of the displays that get put up and they end up with the exact same content running for 5 years, and everybody walks through that lobby and they don't even see it. It's in the background, right? Or through Times Square or someplace. And having the ability to throw up, breaking news, breaking cable news on there when something happens, weather network, something like that, really draws the eye, brings people close to that display, and makes it not seem like it's just showing the same stuff over and over again. So I think that's really preserves or prevents the obsolescence of a display.
Absolutely.
I can throw a couple in there. One thing that I see in networks that decline and eventually go away is usually because the original champion of the system left the company and no one decided to replace them. And then the content and the maintenance starts to fall off. And then it gets to a point people don't think it's worthwhile anymore. So making sure you have a champion of your network and making is one good place to start. Other things could be making sure your software is in maintenance. Don't let it grow old. If things are failing, replace it. There's always new technology that you can replace. And then go back and focus on what your original content strategy was. And maybe you didn't have one, and that's pretty common. And think about, what can we do with this? How can we compete with social media and mobile devices and our televisions at home? How can we compete by putting up good content? And make sure you have a budget for it. But that all comes back to having a champion who's going to push the initiative, keep the content fresh, and keep the network up. It's when you assign a signage maintenance program to someone who already has a full-time job. I see that a lot. It's like, oh, well, our receptionist was in charge of our digital signage network and she's too busy today, so last week's news. So those are the kind of things you can do to keep your content fresh.
Yeah, and I'll just pile on that too, because I've seen that firsthand. Certainly won't mention names, but just beautiful multi-million-dollar lobby display, and I've gone back years later, and it's the exact same content playing that it was the day of commissioning. So I think that goes back to budget, because a lot of times clients don't understand that this is a recurring budget item that year after year they need to commit to buying new content, or if it's generative content, coming up with new algorithms, new cool things to spice it up. Because if you just let it go for years at a time, just like David said, people just walk by it and don't even see it anymore. So they need to make sure they incorporate an ongoing budget for content.
Yeah, no, and I'm interested to hear all of your opinions on this too. What role do standards and interoperability and open protocols play when we're making signage systems smarter and more adaptable as time moves on?
So I'll jump in.
The lack of standards. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'll start off the same way we've been doing it, I guess. I feel like the interoperability used to be fantastic. I think that we used to have a ton of interoperability in the industry when we were not as cloud-based. We had a lot of TCP and RS-232 ways to get in and out of equipment and get information in and out of stuff that we needed to. That's kind of gone a little bit downhill from our perspective, at least. When things have gone a little cloud-based, I've had plenty of products that we've purchased and integrated with that I can't get data out of it all. I can get it on their app and get it in the cloud. I can't get it into any type of system that I can report on and do things that I need to with. So I think that it's one of the things that needs to be improved overall. And it really, without that, at least from our perspective, we're not able to dispatch teams to fix things. The break fix time is extended, and it really reduces the I guess just the ability for us to have an operating display.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can talk about that in the sense of operating systems, especially lately with the increasing amount of Android media players being sold around the world. They all have a different OS. They all have a different version. Some of them are locked down. Some of them aren't. And the mayhem that that can cause with people with Android-based systems is a weekly thing, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. Um, that is a problem in the industry right now, especially with Android, and that also can relate to the system on chip systems from different manufacturers. They're all not equal and they all don't work the same, and their
Mhm.
versions are constantly changing. So there is a need for a standard that we all can agree on, if that's possible.
And I would actually look at that question slightly from a different angle too, not so much from control side, but from the video standard side. So
Mhm.
as a processor manufacturer for us, standards like SDVOE, for instance, are very handy because as long as everybody sticks to the standard, we can create input and output cards that should work with everybody, which makes everyone's life easier. So certainly, the standards are helpful. And you want to work with a product that's modular so that you can go back and forth between standards and proprietary signal types and things like that. But yeah, it's funny, different perspectives from the different side of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you all could give one best practice to a team that is starting a large signage deployment today, what would your advice be? David, do you want me to start with you again?
Sure. Yeah. I would say overestimate the scale.
Okay.
Overestimate, what's needed. If you've got one media player, why don't you have a backup? You should probably have a backup. If you got one live input going to the video wall for a third-party source, that option card on the analog way is the same price for one input or four. Just run all four, because what's going to happen is over time, somebody's going to come up, or even at the close of the project, ownership is going to come and say, well, can it do this or that? And it's always something that we've all gone through and be like, maybe. But if you have that little extra overestimate, that little extra horsepower in the rack room, you can pivot, provide those extra features, and have a happy customer at the end of the day.
That only happens every time, David.
Yeah, it's
But I guess from my perspective, I'll jump in on that. Choose a winning team. Pick a team that is got your back, that's done this before, that knows what they're doing. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. These are things that some of us do 5 times a day, every day. Like, it's just second nature, but it's very specific and it's a niche industry. So choose a winning team that's going to help you. That's already fallen in the pitfalls, so you don't have to, and learn from their knowledge. And just as much as possible, test your system before deployment altogether. Because even like the perfect example, SDVOE, I'm not picking on them, but any standard, you want to make sure that they're actually adhering to the standard. They all work together properly. So, and just don't cut corners, because it will show. On these big displays, they're unforgiving. They are giant magnifying glasses on everything behind the screen. So don't cut corners, invest in the right equipment, and invest in working with the right team.
Mark, you got any thoughts there?
I do. For someone starting out in the digital signage world, maybe starting to build a network, number one is to start with a content strategy.
Mhm.
Most people don't have them, don't know what they are, but that's okay. Figure that out. Figure out what your content is. Don't let someone get excited about buying media play and what kind of displays are we going to get before you talk about your content strategy. If you don't have one, work with an integrator. You should work with an integrator anyhow to help you walk through this process. And lastly, I would say make sure your decision makers involved up front. get a sign off on the content strategy from your C-suite level people. And don't forget your end users. A lot of times I see networks start out where it's all purchased, it's been demoed, it's been negotiated, it's been quoted and delivered, and then they bring the end users in and they're like, what is this? So bring in C-level, bring in decision makers, bring in your end users, all agree on a content strategy, work with an integrator. That's it.
So we've all kind of reflected and lamented on this, that content kind of ends up being what people focus on last, whereas it should be what you focus on first. Are you guys starting to see that shift at all in the industry, or are you still seeing the conversation being about pixels and hardware before it's like, okay, but like, what do we want the pixels to do?
I think, I've seen it be kind of in two camps. I think we have a fair bit of displays that are installed for the art of it, let's call it, for the content, that are designed with plenty of our clients or high-end clients have multi-million-dollar budgets for content, generative content that's created custom for them, et cetera. But there are still way too many that are not. I would say it's probably right now a third of the projects, they have a strategy, and the other 2/3, there isn't one. And even down to not even just digital signage, but a lot of our applications are not traditional 16:9. They are, weird aspect ratios. And so there's applications where there's background space that needs to be filled with something. We put up you're doing a screen share onto a big conference room with an ultra wide display, and it's not 16:9 or 32:9. Then you're going to have some content you have to fill the background with, and that tends to be still on the back burner. So like I said, about 2/3 still on the back burner.
Yeah, and I would say too, borrowing actually from one of David's colleagues, Paul England, I work a lot with him, and his whole point is when he works with clients, they say, oh, I want a big video wall. He said, no, you don't want a big video wall. You want an experience. What experience are you trying to achieve? And then we can build to match that experience. Oh, I want a big waterfall. No, that was something that's already done. Let's do something unique, and let's do like, go viral for your own thing. And then we build according to that. Everybody on this call here, we can build anything. We've got the cool Legos. But it's gotta pop, and that really has a lot to do with what you're going to put on.
And to answer that question on my side, I do see content strategies. They're most typically in the Fortune 100 companies who have a very high level, very high paid staff. It's the middle tier companies that often don't have a strategy. And a lot of times the whole impetus of signage was because their competitors had an impressive system, and someone told someone else, we need to look as good as they do, go get signage, and they're kind of winging it. So it's not quite there yet, but maybe shows like this are going to help that out.
Yeah, go get signage is crazy. What does that mean?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Well, I know we have a few more minutes here, so I would love to go around and just kind of ask each of you some final thoughts to kind of give to our audience and give them something to think about as we end this. So David, I'm going to ask you to start first again.
I guess really from my perspective, and the like Steph said, the signage is the hardware. The content is king still, but all of us need to work together to get that across the finish line. So whether it's the amount of pixels that are going on screen, the media players, the processing that's doing that, all the way down to the artists that are doing that. So getting ahead of that is really the best course of action that we all need to get a little better at, so that everything looks good and actually is presented like it's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Seth?
And I would say from a manufacturing standpoint, because not everything is known right up front, you really need to design with headroom in mind. So if you think it's X, you need X plus Y in your design, because invariably you're going to get somebody throw that last minute request, and you don't want to tell the CEO he can't do that last minute request because we VE'd it out last week. So make sure you build headroom into your system for flexibility, because maybe today your plan was to do generative content with Unreal Engine. But maybe tomorrow or next month or next year, you want to do an interactive display. So there's another media server with LiDAR or different detectors. You need to be able to accommodate that in your system design. So design with headroom in mind, work with good partners, and you'll be in good shape.
Perfect. Mark?
So I don't repeat my previous points. I'll give you a new one, and that is, don't be afraid to measure your audience's reaction. You can hire, there are companies out there that will come and take surveys. They'll observe your audience, approach them and get their feedback. Did they like it? Did they not like it? Did they see it? Did they remember it? Get feedback. Don't be afraid to check your ROI on your system. If you do that, you'll begin to see, is it working or not? Was this investment worth it or not? And what can we do from a content side to make it more engaging? Don't be afraid to pay for a subscription for content for news, sports, weather, social media to mix in with your corporate broadcasts as well. That would be my final message there.
That's a good final message. So, actual last question for each of you. I'm going to go around and just ask where people can connect with you online and or find out more about your companies. David?
Yeah, of course. Dave Kile, I'm on LinkedIn. SNADisplays.com is our website for all things spectacular video displays. And then we will be at Infocom this next year. So, and likely some other trade shows. So just stay close to our socials coming up for this next season.
Perfect. Seth?
Same, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Analogway.com is our website. All contact information there as well. We do the major trade shows as well. And my email address is just seth.teates@analogway.com. So always happy to help anytime we can.
Perfect. Mark?
Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. I am not on Facebook, though you will find me there. I am blocked.
You're in jail.
Yeah, I've violated a rule. But Forté's website is ourforte.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. And thank you so much to SNA Displays for helping make this possible. Thank you guys.